Hello, booktubers. Here's a little tune to start us off. That's called Princess Royal. Maurice Stan's tune, amongst other things. Lovely tune. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about a book that was a massive bestseller in the 70s. And I think it's been, am I right, largely forgotten. I don't know if anybody just reads it anymore. It might, don't know if it's in print or anything. Anyway, it's this, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Robert M. Pirsig. Yeah, so it was published in 1974. And apparently he couldn't find a publisher when he wrote it. Had to go around 20 publishers before somebody would take it. But then it became this massive success. And there's some very flattering blurbs on the back. Philip Toynbee, The Observer. I think Mr. Pirsig has written a work of great, perhaps urgent importance. Read this book. A brilliant and original book. A pathfinding attempt to examine and solve our contemporary ills. Everybody should read it. P.J. Kavanagh in The Guardian. Profoundly important. Full of insights into our most perplexing contemporary dilemmas. Intellectual entertainment of the highest order. It's the New York Times. The most exciting book I've read in years. Endless accolades about this book. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. There's a subtitle. The subtitle is, well, I can find it. Lost it now. An inquiry into values. So as I say, everybody's heard of this book. It was a massive success. And the title was clever because at that time in the 70s, there was Zen was in vogue. It was a big, cult thing, I suppose, Zen. And he's reflecting, I think at the time, there was a book called Zen and the Art of Archery, which I think came out in was it the 30s, 40s? Which was about a man studying the art of archery in a Japanese monastery. Very good book. And then there was Zen and the Art of Flower Arranging, Zen the Art of this, that, and the other came out. So he kind of cleverly jumped on a bit of a bandwagon. And he does say in the introduction, Mr. Pirsig himself says there's very little factual information relating to Orthodox Zen Buddhism and not very factual on motorcycles either. So at least he had a sense of humour. It's a novel, but it's based on his own life very closely, I think. And it's about, as you probably know, I think a lot of people would have heard this. It's about a motorcycle ride across America, a certain part of America anyway. And it's beautifully written. I mean, it opens up the very first bit, page 1. I can see by my watch, without taking my hand from the left grip of the cycle, that it is 8:30 in the morning. The wind, even at 60 miles an hour, is warm and humid. When it's this hot and muggy at 8:30, I'm wondering what it's going to be like in the afternoon. In the wind are pungent odours from the marshes by the road. We are in an area of the Central Plains, filled with thousands of duck hunting sloughs, heading northwest from Minneapolis toward the Dakotas. This highway is an old concrete two-laner that hasn't had much traffic since a four-laner went in parallel to it several years ago. When we pass a marsh, the air suddenly becomes cooler. Then, when we are past, suddenly warms up again. I'm happy to be riding back into this country. It is a kind of nowhere, famous for nothing at all, and has an appeal because of just that. Tensions disappear along old roads like this. We bump along the beat-up concrete between the cattails and stretches of meadow, and then more cattails and marsh grass. Here and there is a stretch of open water, and if you look closely, you can see wild ducks at the edge of the cattails and turtles. There's a red-winged blackbird. I whack Chris's knee and point to it. That's his son. What, he hollers. Blackbird. He says something I don't hear. What? I hollow back. He grabs the back of my helmet and hollers up. I've seen lots of those, Dad. Oh, I holler back. Then I nod. At age 11, you don't get very impressed with red-winged blackbirds. You have to get older for that. For me, this is all mixed with memories that he doesn't have. You see things vacationing on a motorcycle in a way that is completely different from any other. In a car, you're always in a compartment. And because you're used to it, you don't realise it, that through the car window, everything you see is just more TV. You're a passive observer, and it is all moving by you boringly in a frame. On a cycle, the frame is gone. You're completely in contact with it all. You're in the scene, not just watching it, and the sense of presence is overwhelming. So it's about this journey with his son, and but that's not all it's about. There's a lot. It's a fairly difficult book. I mean, I read it in the 70s, and I remember being struggling with it. It's quite deep. There's a lot of philosophy. That's his big thing. I mean, Robert Pirsig, I think he was a teacher, professor of philosophy, or something like that. So there's a lot of talk of comparisons between Plato and Aristotle, and that's one of the themes about it. Plato wrote a dialogue called Phaedrus, and Pirsig starts talking about himself as Phaedrus in the past. And one interesting thing about the book is it's in the present tense, except when he's, I can see by my watch, so as it starts off. And then when he's talking about Phaedrus, it goes into the past. That's where he's looking back. He himself is this Phaedrus. It's a name for himself when he was supposedly in a different kind of life. And he begins to take on a kind of philosophical problem about quality. And I remember when I read this, I found it hard to get my head around it because quality has two meanings. Quality simply means the nature of something, the quality of it. It could be good, it could be bad, but it doesn't mean that. By quality here, it means quality in terms of virtue, goodness of a thing. What's its quality? Does it have quality? is it a quality, whatever. And for me, I struggled to get that at first. I wasn't in my 20s when I read it, but I sort of, I didn't feel he made that clear, but I could be completely wrong. I probably wasn't reading it with enough attention. Anyway, there's a big theme of that and a big struggle with what Socrates and Plato and Aristotle said about quality. And some of this is quite arcane and, maybe a little bit austere, esoteric, but it's a big part of the book. It's a big long book. For me, the journey is the most interesting part. But there's all these interesting asides. For instance, just right at the beginning there, where he's talking about the difference between riding in a motorcycle and riding in a car, and that beautiful description of the landscape they're riding through. It's a quality novel. Is it a novel autobiography? But novel, he calls it a novel. So quality writing, I think it made a huge impression. And one of the big themes about the book is his relationship with his son, called Chris. That forms a big part of it. And the other is he's having a breakdown. And you only slowly realise that. And the crisis comes as they're on the bike, and you don't really realise it. He doesn't tell you exactly what's happening, but I can still remember this. I haven't read it since. They're riding through a mountainous area, and the mountain begins to crumble, and rocks rolling down the mountain. And I think that perhaps is a metaphor for what was happening. His mind was crumbling. He was going through a breakdown. And so it's very interesting about mental states, I think, looking at what that feels like from a person who's suffering. Not many people had written about that from the first person like he does here. And there are a lot of, he says there's no Zen in it. I don't know if there's any Zen in it or not, but there's a lot of profundity, a lot of beautiful observations about all kinds of things that really make you think. And I think Pirsig did, I get the impression he may well have studied Zen Buddhism. And I know there's a note somewhere that his son, I think it's this Chris, was mugged and murdered outside the San Francisco Zen Center. Terrible. But that comes after. It's not in the book. He's long dead now. I wonder if anybody reads this anymore. It's not an easy read, and I think to really get to grips with it and really understand it, you probably have to read it quite a few times. You might need to know something about Plato as well, and Aristotle. I don't think you need to know anything about Zen. Like you said, it's not a treatise about Zen, but Zen does. If you know something about Zen, you will find it in there. But it doesn't describe, Zen koans or any of this kind of thing. Really, but it is the Western philosophy is the backbone of it. But for this to become a bestseller like Jaws or something, I mean, it's far more profound than Jaws, and it's a classic actually. And these big names writing about it, like Philip Toynbee, praising it to the skies. This book will change the way you think and feel about your life. Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. That phrase now has become, it's iconic now, isn't it? And there's all these Zen and the arts of. Here we have Zen and the art of climbing mountains. by Neville Shulman. And would you believe it? Zen and the Art of Stand-Up Comedy. I've not read either of these. I think I bought them for the title, and that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? That's why Mr. Pirsig was so clever to call his book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. If he'd called it, a journey across America on a motorbike, I don't think it would have made the same impact. A few people would have read it, but that would have been it. And it came when there was a big, Zen was a big thing in the 70s and 80s. I think it carries on, but it's not so fashionable now. We have all these cults all the time, don't we? There's mindfulness now and things like this, and they fade away. But I think they carry on, and Zen made a huge impact at one time. It was, it was the thing, wasn't it? And I'm not going to talk about Zen, except to say that there were some real Zen books came out at this time. This is Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. And I'm mentioning it because he was the abbot at San Francisco Zen Center. And, where Pirsig's son was murdered outside. Terrible. But if you do want to read about Zen, that is a really good book. It's unlike all these highfalutin, pretentious books about Zen. This is practical. I think like the way Pirsig refers to Zen in his Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, it's not about the sutras and the koans and everything. And because this was based on talks, he didn't write it. Shunryu Suzuki was a Japanese immigrant, of course. Came over to America in the 70s, I think, 60s maybe, 70s. Long dead now, but that book. And one of the things that I like about that book, that some of these Zen books are so pretentious, but at the beginning of that, there's an editor, I can't remember his name, and he goes to see Shunryu Suzuki. They're putting the final touches to the book of his talks, and the interviewer says to him, "I can't help noticing, sir, that you don't refer to enlightenment much. All the other Zen books, they're always on about enlightenment all the time. So you don't refer to it." And his wife sat there and she says, "That's because he hasn't had any." And he slaps her and says, "Don't tell him that." I love that. That's great. Don't take yourself too seriously. That's the thing, isn't it? Anyway, there we are. I shall finish off, if I may, with 3 Japanese poems that I've set to music. It's very short, it only lasts about a minute. They're all like little haiku type poems that I've put to tunes. So there's a different tune for each poem. They're very short. Traditional, I can't remember who wrote the poems. But I remember that I wrote the music. You left, the mist lingered by the hedge, and yes, I had nothing to do but gaze at the sky, eyes closed. You lean on a tree and listen to the ocean. What is hidden in that sound? This world
no road takes us out of it. I thought there was, and pushed deep into the mountains. But even here, the lone deer cries. Thank you, Booktube.